These are Senegalese protesting against their president, Macky Sall, after he cancelled the presidential election that was scheduled in February 25th. Many Nigerians will be wondering what it means for citizens to protest against their president. They simply cannot relate. They've been absorbing the worst kind of leadership any normal citizen will absorb. The last general election was a constitutional coup. Nigerians simply move on like nothing happened. But Senegalese are not taking a no for an answer, as they've hit the streets to protest against their president. Why are they protesting, you may ask? Let's dive into the reason why the Senegalese are on the streets protesting against the president.
Mes chers compatriotes, alors que s'annonce l'élection présidentielle du 25 février 2024, notre pays est confronté depuis quelques jours à un différend entre l'Assemblée nationale et le Conseil constitutionnel.
There's the Senegalese president, Macky Sall, announcing the cancellation of the presidential election that was scheduled in February. The Senegal president has cancelled the election for his replacement 3 weeks before voting was set to take place, saying that a dispute between the legislative and judicial arms of government needed to be resolved first. Speaking on Saturday afternoon from the presidential palace in Dakar, Senegal's capital, his words live-streamed in his social media platform. President Macky said that he is repealing the decree convening the electoral body, effectively postponing election indefinitely. But his opponent said he was essentially carrying out a coup d'etat and accused him of treason. For the first time in the history, Senegal has just suffered a coup d'etat. Ousmane Diallo, a researcher with Amnesty International, said. In an interview, he said that the dispute Mr. Sall cited as a reason for the postponement was a manufactured crisis, a crisis created in a week to stop the electoral process. After the country's Constitutional Council published lists of approved candidates for the election, some of them were found to have been approved despite holding dual nationality, something presidential candidates are not allowed in Senegal. One is Karim Wade, the son of President Sall's predecessor, Abdoulaye Wade. The younger Mr. Wade, whose mother is from France, had denounced his French citizenship in order to run, but many have done so only after the Constitutional Court rejected him as a presidential candidate. After he was blocked from running, his party accused 2 of the court judges of corruption, and it appears that these allegations form the basis of President Sall's decision to cancel the election. In his speech on Saturday, Mr. Sall portrayed it as a dispute between the National Assembly, which launched an inquiry into the allegation, and the Constitutional Court, saying things had to reach a crisis point. The situation, he said, could seriously damage the credibility of the election in a country that cannot afford a new crisis. Mr. Sall has spent years refusing to confirm whether he will try for a 3rd term in office. Senegal's constitution limits president to 2 consecutive terms, but in 2016, when Mr. Sall was 4 years into his first term, voters changed the constitution to reduce terms to 5 years from 7, which he argued reset the clock, allowing him to run a 3rd term. But last July, he said he will not run again, and later named the Prime Minister, Amadou Ba, as the governing party candidate for the 2024 election. He gave no new dates for an election in his address to the nation on Saturday, but said he was still committed to staying out of the race himself. My solemn commitment not to run in the presidential election remains unchanged, he said in his live stream address before the camera cut to shot of the Golden Lions outside the presidential palace and the Senegalese flags embossed with the presidential initials fluttering in slow motion. Half an hour after the president's address on Saturday, 3 young men jumped off a bus in Okam, in a neighborhood in Dakar, and bought cups of spiced coffee as they discussed the news of the cancelled election. One said that Mr. Sall was just testing people to see if they would take to the streets. This is the biggest coup d'etat ever, said another, Abdul Lahad. Despite a warning from the US Embassy that violent protests could break out, most residents of Senegal's capital Dakar merely continued with their day on Saturday, but many were unhappy. We want to change all these people, said Fatou Diop, A young woman selling fabrics in a Dakar market on Saturday afternoon, referring to the country's leader, Kumbasako, a 28-year-old who works in a bakery in the city center, agreed the Senegalese will no longer accept anyone being imposed on them, she said. In the wake of the announcement of the council election, experts scramble to assess the legality of the president. One said that by cancelling the decree convening the electoral body when he did, the president was violating the constitution and the electoral code. Another said only the constitutional courts could postpone the election, and then only if one of the candidates dies. A presidential candidate, Tienosa, accused the president of treason. Macky Sall knows that his candidate, Amadou Ba, cannot win the presidential election. He said in a statement, he's afraid of the consequences of his actions during all his years at the head of our country. Senegal has so far been spared the military coup that has recently convulsed other former French colonies that neighbor it in the arid Sahel region, just south of the Sahara. But the president critics on Saturday accused him of carrying out a constitutional coup. This is a Louis Bonaparte 1851 style coup, said Ndongo Samba Sylla, an economist referring to Napoleon's nephew, an elected president of France, who, when his term expired, declared himself emperor. Over the years, Senegal has experienced a wave of youth discontent with widespread demonstration against a government that many see as repressive, out of touch, in cohort with France, and unable to create sufficient opportunities for young people who dominate the country demographically. These problems have led many young Senegalese to turn to a politician who portrays himself as a savior from the country's elite, from France and from economic hardship. 49-year-old Ousmane Sonko. Mr. Sonko, who is in jail and barred from standing in the election, his party dissolved, has variously been charged with calling for insurrection, with defamation of the country's tourism minister, and with rape. He was acquitted of rape, but convicted of corrupting youth. His legal battles have always seemed to fuel Mr. Sonko's popularity, sending thousands into the street, bashing pots and pans through the country in his support and the defiance of the government. At least 16 people were killed in the demonstration, according to Human Rights Watch. In strong defiance to the president's announcement, hundreds of Senegalese took to the streets on Sunday in Dakar, the capital of Senegal, to protest against the postponement of the general election announced by the president, Macky Sall. In the aftermath of the protest, during which security forces fired tear gas to disperse the crowd in an unauthorized demonstration, the situation remained confusing. To prevent further unrest, the authorities have suspended internet coverage in the country, while the opposition reiterates their intention to continue the election campaign regularly. Many protesters shouted no to the constitutional coup, contesting the decision of dictator Macky Sall to revoke the voting date. One of the presidential candidates, Daouda Ndia, posted a message on social network in which he claimed to have been brutalized by the police and claimed that some of his collaborators have been arrested. The authorities also suspended the signal of the private broadcaster WAF TV. These are citizens who know their rights and will not be intimidated by a government they voted into power, rather than taking to social media to lament about the government like most Nigerians are doing. Rather, these brave Senegalese took to the street and make their voices be heard over what they claim as a constitutional coup.